Donald Trump is keeping the world on its toes and on edge as the U.S. president says he's heading back into the Situation Room for a second day to decide whether or not to join Israel's war with Iran.
There's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon because the entire world will blow up. We're not going to let that happen. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
In the meantime, Israel and Iran continue to trade airstrikes for a sixth day. The CBC's Sasha Petrusek joins us now from Washington. So, Sasha, what's the latest you're hearing?
Well, David, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of behind-the-scenes kind of information that's been flying through Washington all day today and yesterday, for that matter, about will he or won't he? Will he approve the United States going to war with Iran, effectively joining Israel, or will Donald Trump find some other way around that? And today, I think most people seem to be leaning toward some kind of U.S. military action, although Donald Trump is keeping all of us guessing. He has been in the what he calls the war room, the Situation Room, all afternoon, meeting with his officials, trying to figure out what the plan would be and whether it should be put into effect. We're hearing some reports from U.S. media that he has privately approved a plan, but not necessarily put it into effect. Those sorts of things are flying around. In the meantime, I guess the other option in all of this is that he comes up with some sort of a deal, and he always likes to have a deal in his back pocket. We've also been hearing from other sources, other U.S. sources, that Iran is interested in talking to the United States, despite the fact that senior officials, including the Ayatollah, have said that they basically would have no choice but to retaliate, but to fight back if the Americans did attack. So all of that is swirling around here right now. Trump is obviously speaking to his own officials. We hear that he's speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu every day, and that's an added bit of pressure on him. Netanyahu has for a long time wanted the United States to be involved in this. He wants the firepower. He wants the clout of the Americans to be on the side of Israel, even though Trump today said that he was impressed several times with the way that Israel has handled all of this. So that's basically the situation as we have it right now. It keeps changing every few minutes with new information that comes out. We heard from Trump most recently out of the Oval Office just recently. This is, again, what the kind of way that he's been putting things lately.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, you know, because things change. I mean, especially with war, things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. I've been asked about it by everybody, but I haven't made a decision.
So, you know, he said that he's going to wait until the last second before making the decision. In the meantime, we have news that a very large U.S. Naval force is headed to the eastern Mediterranean. That would be the third aircraft carrier that the United States is putting in the region, with a lot of additional firepower on battleships and in airplanes that are on that carrier. So clearly the resources are being put into place. It's also true that that won't be in place for a few days. So right. We may hear about it at that point.
Okay, so Trump being kind of cryptic, you know, in what he's saying his intentions are. What's the political reaction that you're seeing there, Sasha?
Well, that is the interesting part because, you know, one of the things that Trump has always run on is this idea that the United States should not be involved in these distant forever wars, shouldn't get bogged down in that sort of thing. And that's one of the things that has drawn many of his supporters to his platform. That U.S. resources should not be spent in that way. the debate now is underway within that MAGA movement, that Trump base, about whether this is a good idea or not. And it really is split, with some prominent MAGA figures basically saying that this is not something that the United States should get involved in. And we're hearing maybe a little bit more of that kind of dissent than we do normally from that group about what Trump is doing. They're usually cheerleaders. For instance, here is one Republican representative from Congress who's talking about it, using many of the same terms that a lot of others are right now.
I just don't see American boys and girls going to a faraway land that many of us couldn't even find on a map. Again, it's Israeli. The Israelis can handle this thing. But I think we ought to let the president do his negotiating skills. That's what I elected him to do.
So that is the question. Will Trump use any kind of opportunity to prevent an actual war of this kind that many of his supporters don't want? Or is the decision more or less already made and we're just waiting for the final pieces to be put into place? David?
Okay, Sasha, thank you so much. That's the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Washington. So if the United States does strike Iran, how will it escalate the conflict and what will it mean for the stability of the region? Aaron David Miller is a senior fellow with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former negotiator and advisor with the U.S. State Department. Aaron David Miller, it's good to see you again, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
What do you make of what the president had to say? There's some reporting in the Wall Street Journal just now that the president has approved attack plans, but is holding off on, authorizing the go-ahead until he sees whether Iran will abandon its nuclear ambitions. I mean, how close does it appear that the U.S. is ready to engage directly with Iran militarily?
First of all, there's no way to read Donald Trump's statements. I mean, I served in every administration from Jimmy Carter to Bush 43. No American president ever behaved this way, toggling back and forth, claiming maybe we'll get a deal, but I haven't decided yet, but Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Let's let them fight it out. We just don't know. I mean, it reflects, frankly, a degree of confusion and the absence of an effective strategy. Donald Trump is managing three U.S. mediated conflicts, one between Russia and Ukraine, one between Israel and Hamas, and until last Sunday, when the sixth negotiating session between Stephen Witkoff, his envoy, and the Iranian foreign minister, Araghchi, was supposed to meet, U.S.-Iran. All three of these negotiating tracks are now cratering. In Russia-Ukraine, Donald Trump wants to end the fighting, but he doesn't want to end the war. With respect to Israel and Hamas, he's interested in getting the hostages out, but he has no interest in involving the United States in the reconstruction of Gaza, let alone pursuing a broader Israeli-Palestinian deal. And had the Israelis not moved Thursday, Friday last week, Donald Trump probably would have tried to negotiate not a JCPOA, but a broader JPOA, a joint plan of action, which would have probably parked the Iranian nuclear issue for the remainder of his term. So Donald Trump doesn't think long term. He talks in transformative terms, but he's situational and he's very transactional. It boils down to three options. Number one, you strike. Number two, you find a diplomatic off-ramp. Or number three, you do what Donald Trump has done over the course of the last week or so with respect to Israel and Iran. You apply the same logic that he's used with Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. You, quote, let them fight it out. So one of these three options is going to materialize because I don't think the status quo, as he envisioned it, is tenable. He appears to be very weak, again, toggling back and forth with words and deeds that don't suggest or reflect resolution or determination.
Well, let's just go through some of those options. Let's go through the first one, the strike option, because there is noise of this. I was just at the G7 where, the other G7 leaders couldn't get the president to agree to a call for de-escalation in that conflict because clearly he has other options and intentions. If the U.S. does make this direct strike on Iran, we know they're backing Israel, supplying Israel, defending Israel. I mean, what does direct involvement, though, on an attack on Iran mean for the stability of the region and what might happen next?
Well, forget the stability of the region. I mean, in the last 18 months, the region we haven't seen a regional war. We may well be on the cusp of one. Look, it depends on the nature of the strike. Is it going to be surgical, dealing with Fordo and a number of other nuclear sites which the Israelis have tried and partially created some damage? I think they've done damage. They haven't crippled Iran's program. Or is it going to be a comprehensive, massive strike, shock and awe, with long-range refueling capacity, which allows American aircraft, unlike Israelis, to hover, to basically try to destabilize the regime. Not that the U.S. has any plan for regime change, because there's no alternative force somehow waiting in the wings if Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall to try to somehow put the pieces of Humpty Dumpty back together again. So it really depends on the nature of the strike. If it's just on Fordo and they drop these massive ordnance penetrators carried by these B-2 bombers, it'll take more than one. It may take 6, 7, 8. But even if Fordo is destroyed, the question is, really, you still cannot end, terminate, eradicate Iran's nuclear program. You can set it back by any estimates 2 years, perhaps, if the U.S. is involved. No more than 6 months with respect to what the Israelis have done. So if you want to end Iran's nuclear program, if you want to use the president's word, make sure Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, you basically have to essentially replace the regime.
Right.
Replace the regime with a regime that is not acquisitive, that has no need or interest in nuclear weapons. And frankly, I don't see how you do that.
So they could. I mean, I don't have a clear sense of how close Iran is to a nuclear weapon. It seems like my whole adult life, they've been 2 weeks to 6 months away,
No, I mean,
and they never quite get there, right?
I don't want to interrupt, but I mean, I think there's an answer to this question. They have enough fissile material, highly enriched uranium at 60%, that within a very short time, they can go to weapons grade. But the fissile material is just the beginning.
Right.
You have to miniaturize the warhead. You need a physics package. You need a delivery system. There are reports that The Economist was running that the Iranians are well advanced in finding trigger mechanisms to actually make a nuclear weapon actually work. And if that's the case, then I think you could probably say safely that Iran is probably anywhere from 6 months to a year away from manufacturing
Right.
a deliverable nuclear weapon.
So I just wonder, as a final point, sir, just if the options are strike, because you can only really set it back, you can't really necessarily stop it entirely, and this is the time frame you're looking at. If the military option is there, but who knows if they'll execute it, there is a negotiation and diplomatic path. Trump claims Iran is asking for negotiations, which of course Iran denies, but there's reports of Germany, France, and the UK. They're going to meet with Iran's foreign minister on Friday on nuclear talks.
Right.
All these parallel tracks. I mean, what do you think, as a final point, are the odds of a diplomatic solution here?
I mean, they've been around negotiations on the Arab-Israel issue for a long time. In order to have a successful negotiation, you need two parties who are willing and able to negotiate. You need some measure of urgency, not just the presence of pain, but the presence of gain. In other words, there has to be a balance of interests. Otherwise, most negotiations don't close and they won't endure. I would just raise the question after the last week, precisely what is the basis? What's going to be a basis for a negotiation? Round 6, had it occurred, would have led to an impasse, because the Iranians want the right to enrich and the administration wants no enrichment. The administration, to its credit, was trying to build a bridge through some sort of consortium that would make commercially available highly enriched uranium, enriched uranium, to allow Iran's peaceful nuclear reactors to be generated. But the gap on that issue was wider than the Grand Canyon. So right. I don't think there's a basis for negotiation. You could continue to let the status quo play out and let the Israelis continue to do what they're doing. I would put a fairly large bet, I think, now on some sort of military strike, but we have to be very realistic about what the consequences are. If the United States is prepared every other week in response to Iran's efforts to reconstitute its program, to continue to strike Iranian facilities, ballistic missile production to make sure that no American aircraft are shot down, continue to go after Iranian generals and scientists with the help of the Israelis, yeah, if you keep this up, yeah, you could probably deny Iran a nuclear program, but I'm not sure that's feasible.
Aaron David Miller, we always appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
Thanks,
from
David.
Washington.
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it, sir.